Childhood was magic for June Menzies. Growing up in a family of 6, young June never realized the hardships they faced, or the real role that her mother played.
We didn't have any money. Mother had made new outfits for us simply by taking coats we already had and making scarves and fixing them up for the Easter parade. And I said, "Oh, that's wonderful, Mother. And just imagine it didn't cost you anything." And so Mother said, "June," and she went through the lists of what it cost. And it cost finding the material, doing the sewing, and then she told me about the hours that it took to make it. So she said that she was putting a price to all these things. And I said, "Oh, come on, Mother." And it wasn't until many years later that I understood how significant that had been for me as an experience in my childhood.
As a child, she wanted to be a spy. As an adult, she joined the military, interpreting enemy letters. But what she noticed was the enemy wasn't the enemy after all. They were just like her, with friends, families, and a love of country. Eventually, June would let her voice be heard, writing a letter to the dean after getting a degree in economics.
Once I decided where the truth lay, I tried to communicate it. So I told him that it was nonsense. And so he apparently was quite amused by that.
It set her on a new path to expose the inequities in and the hypocrisy of a male-dominated world.
I didn't begin to understand until I got into the United Nations conventions and understood what human rights were. And I realized that I had been living in a dream world. It was my experience and then the study and the recognition of what human rights were that made me begin to question and write.
Justice. For June Menzies, it was all about justice, especially justice for women. And nowhere was injustice more evident than for abandoned mothers. June didn't just listen to their stories. She took action. She organized their appeal. She took it to the Manitoba legislature and eventually got their stories incorporated into Canada's Royal Commission on the Status of Women. Not bad for a girl, but the accomplishment was not without its critics, and they stung.
I was accused of, I think by a high school principal, of losing my femininity because I was asking for recognition of women in the Canada Pension Plan. They felt it was disloyalty to the husband, disloyalty to the family, if you said anything about the position of the woman in the home.
Disloyal is one thing June Menzies is not. She's always been true to her principles and herself. Determined, educated, and insightful, she continues to look forward, not backward. And her message to a new generation of women? Take courage from each other. Speak up when you can.
When you're young and vulnerable, you don't want to be subjected to that. So you don't say what you really believe. And then you lose the right to say what you really believe.
June Menzies has never surrendered the right to speak her mind.
My experience with women is if there's something there to be done, you do it and move on.
Speaking her mind has never been an issue for Berenice Sisler. Raised in Winnipeg's East Kildonan, Berenice came from a progressive family of equals. While she knew that inequality was a matter of fact, she didn't know it was a matter of law.
I think that I was born with a good amount of anger in my life, you know. When I saw things that weren't right and when things weren't equal, they weren't right to me. I got mad, and that's when I started to do things about it. And that's what motivated me a lot. I realized that once I started to read the laws and realized how inequitable they were, I really got mad about this. And there's nothing like anger to motivate you to action.
Relentless and undaunted, it was time for the trained teacher to educate an entire generation. Berenice started taking her message to as many women as she could. From church basements to the floor of the legislature, Berenice Sisler demanded change and accountability.
And sometimes the shock treatment was the best approach, and sometimes you were tactful. You can tell I wasn't tactful terribly often.
Like the now almost infamous meeting when Berenice discovered a covert among the ranks.
How would this equality affect the business world and so on? And I think I turned on her and said, you're here, this was at the YWCA, you're here to represent women, not the business community. The business community can take care of itself very well. So you think about supporting women. And there was a kind of a hush all over the group. And I sort of pulled in my horns and was a bit more tactful as the meeting went on.
With grit, determination, and an unwavering sense of what is right, Berenice Sisler managed to change family laws in Manitoba. So what was next? Become a lawyer?
Instead of going into law, which I think could be quite boring if you think about it, very much. Excuse me if I'm offending anybody. But, you know, instead of that, I had the advantage of seeing the law work and seeing how it could be changed.
Perhaps political office?
I don't think that I ever seriously thought about running for office. It seemed to me that there was too much to be done, and that was too slow a process.
No. For Berenice, it was a book, documenting the journey that changed Manitoba law and political thinking.
As my grandchildren found out when they asked me, one of them said to me, "How long did it take you to write the book, Granby?" That's what they call me. And I said, well, you had to ask, 10 years.
A Partnership of Equals was published in 1995 and still stands as a testament to Berenice Sisler's fight for equality. A fight that now allows women to enter and leave a marriage as absolute equals, the way it should be.
You just keep trying. I don't think Nellie McClung ever gave up on anything. If you have it all, you've got nothing to work for, do you? There, it's all there. So I think that not having it all, is, as I've said, motivates you to improve things. And that, I think that's what you live for. Am I wrong?